In the previous episode, Maxfield recruited the Travelers to set a trap, imprisoning Enzo and Damon in a house, forcing Damon to feed on Enzo in order to survive. Katherine and Stefan found Damon and rescued him. Stefan brought Damon back to their basement and chained him up. Meanwhile, Stefan and Caroline discovered that Katherine had taken over Elena's body. Nadia, who had been bitten by Tyler, was used as bait to lure Katherine out. In the end, Nadia died, and Stefan killed Katherine with the Traveler's knife, returning Elena to her own body. In the final scene, Katherine's soul appeared beside Bonnie and revealed that she had injected Elena's body with a mix of werewolf venom and the Ripper virus. Then, instead of crossing over to the other side, Katherine descended into hell. Since Katherine's death, both Elena and Damon have been imprisoned, but their circumstances couldn't be more different. Elena is trapped in an empty dormitory, where a magical barrier cast by the witches confines her. At least she has the freedom to move around, and Stefan regularly brings her blood. Damon, on the other hand, is locked in a dungeon, guarded by Matt and Jeremy. Luckily, they can still talk to each other over the phone to ease their loneliness. During one of their calls, Stefan arrives with a new phone for Elena and a small vial of blood, but it's nowhere near enough to satisfy her. She longed for fresh, warm blood and promised Stefan that she could control herself. Without hesitation, Stefan bites into his wrist, and the scent of blood drives Elena wild. Meanwhile, Caroline heads to Maxfield's lab in search of a cure, only to be confronted by Enzo, who is now working for the Travelers. Enzo informs Caroline that the cure is in the hands of the Travelers, but it requires Stefan to retrieve it in person. Left with no choice, Caroline informs Stefan, who prepares to head to the Travelers' camp. After Stefan leaves, a bored Elena begins reading Katherine's diary, only to be struck by vivid hallucinations, as if she's experiencing Katherine's memories firsthand. It turns out that the Ripper virus Katherine injected her with contains werewolf venom, which is known to cause hallucinations in vampires. Under the influence of the diary, Elena's hallucinations become elaborate. She seduces Stefan, just as Katherine would, only to be caught by Damon, leading to a bitter conflict between the brothers over her. Suddenly, Elena snaps back to reality, finding herself with a nosebleed. The werewolf venom isn't just causing hallucinations, it's also breaking down her body. Stefan and Caroline arrive at the Travelers' camp. The Travelers have lived under a curse for generations, unable to settle down and forced to wander endlessly. The Travelers wanted to trade the cure for Stefan's doppelganger. Stefan frowns at the revelation. It turns out Stefan has a human doppelganger, and the Travelers can use Stefan to track him down. As mentioned earlier, the Travelers had collected blood from both Stefan and Elena, but found that their blood could not be merged. The problem lies in the fact that Stefan's doppelganger is still alive. Only one of Stefan and his shadow can survive. Meanwhile, Elena slips back into another hallucination. This time, she sees a blood-soaked Aaron coming to exact revenge. In reality, a male classmate has broken through the barrier. The boy's name is Luke, and while he knows Elena, she doesn't recognize him. Starving, Elena is ready to feast. She feeds her blood to Luke, intending to turn him into a vampire, hoping it will make his blood taste better. But she soon notices bite marks already on Luke's neck. It turns out that Katherine, while possessing Elena's body, had already fed on Luke. Elena snaps back to her senses, realizing that what she's doing is no different from Katherine. She compels Luke to deliver a message to Bonnie, asking her to bring Liv. After letting go of her only food source, Elena's condition worsens. She's losing her grip on reality, unable to distinguish between what's real and what's a hallucination. In a fleeting moment of clarity, she hastily calls Damon. Damon was extremely worried about Elena, and in a desperate bid to escape, he took Matt hostage. Jeremy had no choice but to help Damon unlock his chains. By the time Bonnie and Liv arrived at the barrier, Elena had already been driven mad by her hallucinations. She couldn't escape, but she could still throw wooden stakes. Liv is stabbed in the stomach with the stick, and only Elena's blood can heal her. Meanwhile, Stefan offered himself to the Travelers in exchange for the cure. The Travelers all began to chant, using Stefan's mind to locate his doppelganger.
Ian, he's in a city.
He's in Atlanta.
Though they had found the location of the doppelganger, the Travelers did not stop their spellcasting. They only needed one doppelganger, and they intended to kill the more dangerous one, Stefan. Caroline quickly intervened to stop them. At the same time, Elena managed to escape the dormitory and ran right into Damon, who had just arrived. Damon admitted to killing Aaron, explaining that at the time, he had been deeply hurt by Katherine. Elena couldn't handle the truth. At that moment, Enzo arrived with the cure that Stefan had risked his life to get. Damon and Elena don't have to feed on their own kind anymore. Caroline had managed to convince the travelers to spare Stefan's life. When Stefan regained consciousness, he mistook Caroline for Rebecca. Had he fried his brain again?
Kidding. Lexi, right?
Funnier the first time.
Did it work?
Before long, Enzo returned. It turned out that Caroline, to save Stefan, had agreed to eliminate the doppelganger herself, leaving only one Stefan alive.
Besides, you do the same for me, right?
I don't trust him.
Don't worry. I don't either.
Caroline and Enzo teamed up to work across the state. Elsewhere, Liv's injury left Bonnie feeling terribly guilty. But Liv didn't regret her actions. She was willing to continue learning magic from Bonnie. When Liv returned to her dorm, she casually waved her hand and lit all the candles in the room, a feat far beyond a novice witch. It turned out that Liv and Luke were siblings. Everyone had missed one key detail. While Elena was trapped inside the barrier, Luke had been able to come and go freely. The mystery was finally solved. Luke was also a witch. The brother is disguised as a hypnotized, ordinary person, while the sister pretends to be a rookie to break into the main group. Back at the mansion, Damon and Elena had a huge argument. Though Katherine was dead, they still had to confront the wounds she had left behind. They said they were breaking up, claiming they weren't right for each other, but their bodies betrayed their words as they drew closer, unable to resist the pull between them. Do you believe there's someone in the world who looks exactly like you? Maybe your doppelganger is living a completely different life in some other city. The travelers had invaded Stefan's mind and found his doppelganger, Tom. Only one of Stefan and Tom will survive. To protect Stefan, Caroline had no choice but to go kill Tom, while Enzo was tasked with keeping an eye on her. Caroline and Enzo arrived at the hospital where Tom worked, only to learn that he had been missing for 4 months. The travelers re-entered Stefan's mind and discovered that Tom had met a red-haired woman just before he disappeared. Caroline's heart goes out to Stefan, and she promises not to let him down, but Stefan reminded her that Tom was a good person and didn't deserve to die. This left Caroline in a painful dilemma. If she didn't kill Tom, the travelers would execute Stefan. Meanwhile, due to Jeremy skipping classes, the teacher called his guardian to the school. When Elena arrived at their old school, she discovered that she wasn't listed as Jeremy's guardian.
Then who is?
Damon Salvatore. Present.
Damon told Elena that Jeremy might be cheating on Bonnie again. He mentioned seeing Jeremy laughing and hanging out with the witch, Liv, at a bar when he was supposed to be in school. But Damon was wrong about Jeremy. As a vampire hunter with an immunity to magic, Jeremy was not only immune to vampire compulsion, but could also resist the Travelers' parasitic magic. Liv was actually trying to recruit him to help fight the Travelers. Though witches and Travelers are both magic users, they've been sworn enemies for generations. 2,000 years ago, the immortality curse created by Silas and Ketsaya defied the natural order, so the witches united to place a curse on the Travelers, dooming them to wander the world without a home. Now, the Travelers were making a comeback, and Liv wanted Jeremy's help to investigate their plot, which also concerned Elena's safety. Meanwhile, Caroline and Enzo tracked down Hazel's house and discovered she was a witch. Vampires can't enter a home without the owner's invitation, so Enzo simply shot Hazel in the head through the doorknob, instantly turning the house into unowned property. Hazel's spirit sought out Bonnie, and coincidentally, Luke was also in the library. Before crossing over to the other side, Hazel asked Bonnie to tell Luke that she had tried to use magic to hide the doppelganger, but they had found him anyway. Bonnie quickly realized that Luke was not only a witch, but had been watching her all along. After learning of Hazel's death, Luke immediately informed his sister Liv, initiating another plan. The siblings had originally intended to protect Elena and gradually investigate the Travelers' conspiracy. But now that Stefan had fallen into the Travelers' hands, they planned to kill Elena and cut off the Travelers' path to power. Tyler intervened, thinking Liv was just a novice witch. Elsewhere, Caroline and Enzo found Stefan's doppelganger, Tom. He had been magically placed in a coma by witches, and death would be a mercy. Caroline, determined to protect Stefan, prepared to kill Tom herself. But at that moment, Tom suddenly woke up.
What's happening? Who are you people?
We're angels, mate. Come to deliver you to the sweet hereafter.
Calm down.
Looking at the face identical to Stefan's, Caroline found herself unable to do it. Recalling Stefan's words, Caroline ambushed Enzo and snapped his neck.
I'm getting you out of here.
To thwart the Traveler's plot, Liv planned to kill Elena, as the doppelgangers were a crucial part of the Traveler's rise to power. Thankfully, Damon arrived just in time and subdued Liv. Meanwhile, Caroline took Tom away. After being imprisoned for months, Tom devoured his food hungrily. Caroline felt torn. She had come to kill Tom, but now she had ended up protecting him. Tom thanked Caroline for saving his life. Caroline smiled bitterly and said, "Actually, I came for your life." Suddenly, Tom began choking on his food, struggling to reach for some water. Caroline stepped in first, taking the water cup away. Maybe this was fate. But it turned out to be just Caroline's fantasy. She couldn't bring herself to kill him, yet she found herself hoping that Tom would die. When Tom tried to keep eating, Caroline stopped him, genuinely worried he might choke to death. Under Damon's harsh interrogation, Liv revealed that Elena was the last remaining female doppelganger. If Tom were killed, Stefan would be the only male doppelganger left. At that moment, Jeremy showed up and offered to vouch for Liv. Meanwhile, Luke was blocked at the door by Matt and Tyler, who had been called in by Jeremy for backup. Jeremy vouched for Liv to gain an advantage against the Travelers. After all, Bonnie had lost her powers, and the Gemini twins knew the Travelers better than anyone. This time, Jeremy wanted to take charge and protect his family and friends. The two sides reached an agreement to work together. Meanwhile, Caroline was preparing to escort Tom to safety, but Enzo suddenly caught up to them. He didn't give Caroline the chance to act, snapping Tom's neck in one swift motion. Caroline was furious, but Enzo was in no better position. He killed Tom to save someone too. The Travelers knew the whereabouts of the woman he loved. Despite Enzo having his own reasons, Caroline was still furious. But in reality, Enzo had done what she wanted to do, but couldn't bring herself to. In an attempt to make amends, Enzo revealed the new location of the Travelers' camp.
Feel free to tell Stefan you're the one who saved his life.
After finding the Travelers' camp, Caroline volunteered to stay by Stefan's side, even though he was still their prisoner. Caroline, always honest and kind, couldn't bring herself to lie to Stefan. She admitted her failure and told him that it was Enzo who corrected her mistake. Otherwise, Stefan would have been the one to die. To ease Caroline's guilt, Stefan reassured her.
Not that you couldn't do it. That you wouldn't do it. Because that's what makes you you.
Lying in an abandoned car in the enemy camp, they comforted each other. Their relationship had grown deeper than friendship, though it had not yet blossomed into romance. Meanwhile, Jeremy moved out of Damon's mansion to focus on preparing for the upcoming battle. This time, he would guard his sister. Damon and Elena had no idea about Jeremy's plan. Now, only the two of them were left alone in the castle. It was at this point that Elena suggested moving back to the college dorm. She wanted some time apart from Damon so they could each reflect on things. Late at night, Stefan and Caroline were awakened by the sound of chanting. They got up to investigate and found a dozen Travelers chanting spells while drinking the blood of the doppelgangers. Sloane set one person on fire, and the others soon followed, spontaneously combusting in what resembled a cult-like ritual. Stefan and Caroline, watching from the shadows, were horrified. These people were absolutely insane. They used the chaos as an opportunity to escape. Meanwhile, the souls of the sacrificed Travelers found Bonnie, and after touching her, they crossed into the other side. Bonnie screamed in agony. As the anchor between the human world and the other side, Bonnie could experience the pain they endured in life as their souls passed through her body. Bonnie fainted from the overwhelming pain, and as she collapsed, a dark shadow emerged from her body, taking the form of a towering man. He was Markos, the leader of the Travelers and the creator of the doppelganger curse. After his resurrection, Markos immediately gathered the remaining Travelers and ordered them to possess the bodies of the town's residents. This was a unique ability of the Travelers, and even Sheriff Forbes wasn't spared from being possessed. Without anyone realizing it, the Travelers had infiltrated the town. The only way to test whether someone had been possessed was to stab them with a knife that could expel souls. Tyler, being a hybrid with strong healing abilities, quickly completed the test. Matt, however, wasn't so lucky. But Matt was tough. Liv had called them all together to warn them that the travelers had already begun infiltrating the town. It was one of their signature tactics. Meanwhile, Bonnie received a warning from her grandmother. Markos, the leader of the travelers, had escaped from the other side, but he wasn't the witch's biggest concern. There was another prisoner who was trying to return to the human world. As the grandmother and granddaughter talked, an earthquake began to shake the other side, and Bonnie's grandmother looked deeply worried. Ever since the traveler's ritual, both Elena and Stefan had been experiencing hallucinations. The strange part was that their hallucinations had a common theme. They found themselves deeply in love. This was suspicious. Caroline suspected it had something to do with the travelers. She was far more anxious than Damon, and it was clear that Caroline had started to develop feelings for Stefan. Damon reached out to Liv, the witch, for help, but it was Luke who showed up instead. Luke explained that he couldn't stop the hallucinations. He had deduced that Markos had escaped from the other side. Markos was the rising star among the travelers after Silas, but unlike the love-obsessed Silas, Markos was focused solely on leading his people in the fight against the dark forces. Elena and Stefan's visions might have been a signpost. Markos was using them to guide Elena and Stefan to find him.
Then we need more clues. Break out the popcorn, Blondie. Elena's little sex romp isn't over yet.
Meanwhile, Matt had set his sights on Sheriff Forbes. If the travelers were planning to take over the town, they'd likely start by targeting local officials. To his surprise, Sheriff Forbes made the first move and killed Matt. Fortunately, Matt was wearing his resurrection ring, and his spirit temporarily crossed into the other side through Bonnie. Once there, Matt ran into an old enemy. Cole warned him that the other side was in serious trouble and that someone even more terrifying than Markos was trying to return to the living world. But Matt didn't have time for Cole's ominous warnings. He was only interested in finding his deceased sister. After Matt went missing, Tyler became suspicious of Sheriff Forbes, and the following test ensued.
My mom says hi.
Send her my best, okay?
Tyler's mother had died long ago. Tyler immediately stabbed Sheriff Forbes with a dagger, expelling the traveler that had been possessing her. Unexpectedly, the mantis caught the cicada and the crow caught the mouse. In the other side, Matt finally found his sister, Vicky. Vicky warned him that the other side was falling apart and urged him to return to the living world as soon as possible. A violent wind suddenly swept in, pulling Vicky away in a manner eerily similar to Katherine's disappearance. As Matt grieved, Cole approached him once again, urging Matt to go back and warn the others about the collapse of the other side, which put Matt in a difficult position, because after he came back to life, he would forget everything here.
Well, you better find a way to remember it. And if this place goes down, then what happened to your sister is going to happen to us all.
Meanwhile, Damon was frustrated with the hallucinations. Elena tried to comfort him, saying none of it was real, and that nothing could shake their love. Just then, another hallucination appeared before Elena. Stefan was proposing to her. Overjoyed, she tearfully accepted without hesitation. They kissed, and in the vision, their life together was simple yet happy. In this hallucination, Elena also saw the address of a house. Damon and Enzo went to investigate, finding an abandoned house. Enzo couldn't help but mock Damon along the way.
I wonder if this is where Stefan and Elena had crazy vision sex.
Sure enough, Markos was inside, but he wasn't pleased. He had expected Elena and Stefan, not two sinister men. Damon got straight to the point, asking why the doppelgangers were experiencing these visions. Markos, expressionless, explained.
I'm the reason Stefan and Elena are having visions of each other.
You?
Well, would you look at that? I think we just met the universe.
The curse that bound the doppelgangers to fall in love with each other had finally been broken. 1,500 years ago, a powerful witch cursed the doppelgangers to be irresistibly drawn to each other in every lifetime. That witch was Markos, leader of the Travelers. The so-called true love curse was merely a tool for Markos to track the doppelgangers down. A traveler prophecy foretold that the blood of the doppelgangers could help the travelers regain their strength. Markos first told Enzo where to find the woman he loved, then explained to Damon the tragic history of the travelers. Punishing Silas was merely an excuse for the witches to start a war. They cursed the travelers to wander eternally, unable to settle in one place. As a result, the travelers couldn't draw power from the earth and had to rely on group spells. And when they stayed in one place too long, disasters, plagues, earthquakes, fires, would strike. Markos assured Damon he had no intention of harming Elena or Stefan. As a gesture of goodwill, he promised to end their hallucinations. Damon was shocked to discover that the local villagers had all been possessed by travelers. At Markos's command, they began chanting in unison. The travelers were the most powerful group of witches in history. They didn't need to brainwash, they simply took control of minds. Meanwhile, Elena was lost in her dream, where she and Stefan even had children. Suddenly, the vision vanished.
It's done.
Markos had lifted the curse that bound the doppelgangers to fall in love. But instead of feeling relieved, both Stefan and Elena were left with a sense of quiet disappointment.
Does that mean that it's over?
Yeah. It's over.
Back in the real world, after Matt revived, he shockingly remembered everything he had experienced after his death. There was no denying it now. Something was seriously wrong with the other side. Caroline healed her mother with her vampire blood and was deeply grateful to Tyler. Little did she know, Tyler had already been possessed by a traveler. He handed over the last remaining dagger capable of killing souls to Markos, who then performed a spell to destroy it. Markos gathered his followers and chose one of them as a test subject for the prophecy. Sloane drank Tyler's blood, and then Markos slit her throat. During this time, no one noticed that Tyler had regained control of his body, allowing him to eavesdrop without suspicion. Not long after, Sloane resurrected. When she drank human blood, she fully transformed into a vampire, Markos explained.
Vampirism originated from the magic of witches, and it is in the prophecy that the blood of the final two doppelgangers will undo witch magic.
He had combined Elena and Stefan's blood before giving it to Sloane. The travelers began chanting once again, and Tyler pretended to join in. Markos eagerly examined Sloane's body and noticed that her wounds weren't healing. The doppelganger blood had stripped away all magic, leaving Sloane neither a vampire nor a traveler. Markos was overjoyed. They could finally break the curse of eternal wandering, and they could rebuild their home in Mystic Falls. Sloane was ecstatic at the news, but Markos sorrowfully explained,
We'll finally have a place to settle. Sadly, I'm afraid you won't be able to enjoy it with us.
The fatal wound on Sloane's neck suddenly reopened. The doppelganger's blood could dispel and destroy any magic, and without the protection of magic, Sloane returned to a state of death.
We're almost ready to begin our work. Except, we're gonna need a lot more blood.